Hi, kindergartners. Welcome back to chapter 13 of The Wizard of Oz. Yesterday, or the last time you watched, the last chapter, I should say, was a huge deal because we spent time with the Wicked Witch and we got to learn all about who she is in the storybook. We found out that in the storybook, she wears an eye patch and she has one eye that's as strong as a telescope. And she also had that golden cap that she would wear that could control the monkeys. And in the storybook, she sent wolves and bees and crows to get rid of our four main characters, to get them out of her land. And she didn't win. Then she put on this golden cap and it had a certain spell about it. And she sent the winged monkeys to get them. And of course, they couldn't touch Dorothy. Dorothy has the mark from the Good Witch on her forehead, and she has those silver shoes. So she couldn't really do anything to Dorothy, but she really wanted those shoes. So she ended up playing a trick on Dorothy and getting Dorothy to trip and fall. And one of Dorothy's shoes popped off. And Dorothy was so mad. She just kind of had it. And she ended up throwing a bucket of water on the witch. Well, it melted the witch. That was what it was going to take to get rid of the witch. So the witch in the storybook is gone. She melted down into a puddle of brown goo, and Dorothy washed her out the door with more water. Same exact thing happens in the movie. However, in the movie, the witch doesn't use wolves or crows or bees. She does, however, have flying monkeys. And in the movie, she also doesn't have a gold crown or gold cap. And she also doesn't have a telescope eye. She has, and I have it somewhere here, I believe, in my pictures, she has sort of a crystal ball that helps her see. So they made that very different from the storybook to the movie. And we also see that in the movie, her skin is green, which we talked about. It was makeup that was on her, okay? And of course, the shoes that she wants in the movie are the ruby red slippers, not the silver shoes. So there are some big differences there. Now we're going to read chapter 13, which is how the four were reunited. And reunited means come back together again. Because if you remember, while in the movie all of the characters are here, let's see, where's that good picture that I just showed you? In the movie, all the characters are at the Queen's castle. In the book, that's not true. The Tin Woodman was thrown on rocks, remember, and he couldn't move anymore. And the Scarecrow, all his hay was taken out of him and his clothes were thrown up in a tree. So these two characters right now in the storybook are not at the castle. Only the lion and Dorothy and little Toto are there. All right, let's get reading. Let's see. The Cowardly Lion was much pleased to hear that the Wicked Witch had been melted by a bucket of water. And Dorothy at once unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. They went in together to the castle, where Dorothy's first act was to call all of the Winkies together and tell them that they were no longer slaves. There was a great rejoicing among the yellow Winkies, for they had been made to work hard during many years for the Wicked Witch, and she always treated them with great cruelty. Cruelty means she treated them bad. So she forced them to work for her and then treated them badly. And that's something called a slave. It's very unfair and it's not okay. And so that is what the Wicked Witch had done to these poor Winkies. Here is a picture of our poor Tin Woodsman, who, remember, was dropped in a ditch on all these sharp rocks. He doesn't look so good. The Winkies forever kept this day as a holiday and spent the time in feasting and dancing. "If our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, were only with us," said the Lion, "then I should be quite happy." "Well, do you suppose we could rescue them?" asked the girl anxiously. "Well, we could try," answered the Lion. So they called the Yellow Winkies and asked them if they could help to rescue their friends. And the Winkies said they would be delighted to do all in their power for Dorothy, who had set them free from slavery. So she chose a number of the Winkies who looked as if they knew the most, and they all started away. They traveled that day and part of the next until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent. His axe was near him, but the blade was rusted and the handle was broken off. The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms and carried him back to the yellow castle once again. So they're in this land, Winky Land, it says right there on our map. Okay. Dorothy, shedding a few tears from the plight of her old friend, and the Lion looking very sorry. When they reached the castle, Dorothy said to the Winkies, "Are any of your people tinsmiths?" "Oh, yes, some of us are very good tinsmiths," they told her. "Then please bring them to me," she said. And when the tinsmiths came in, bringing with them all their tools in their baskets, she inquired, "Can you straighten out those dents in the Tin Woodman and bend him back into shape again and solder him together where he is broken?" The tinsmiths looked the Woodman over carefully and then answered that they thought they could mend him so he would be as good as ever. So they set to work in one of the big yellow rooms of the castle, and they worked for 3 days and 4 nights, hammering and twisting, bending and soldering, polishing and pounding at the legs and body and head of the Tin Woodman, until at last he was straightened out to his old form, and his joints worked as well as ever. To be sure, there were several tin patches on him, but the tinsmiths did a good job, and as the Woodman was not a vain man, he didn't mind being patched up at all. When at last he walked into Dorothy's room and thanked her for rescuing him, he was so pleased that he wept tears of joy, and Dorothy had to wipe each tear very carefully from his face with her apron so his joints would not be rusted. At the same time, her own tears fell thick and fast at the joy of meeting her old friend again, and these tears did not need to be wiped away. As for the Lion, he wiped his eyes so often with the tip of his tail that it became quite wet, and he was obliged to go out into the courtyard and hold up his tail in the sun until it dried. "Oh, if we only had the Scarecrow with us again," said the Tin Woodman, when Dorothy had finished telling him everything that had happened. "Well, then I should be quite happy." "Well, we must try to find him," said the girl. So she called the Winkies to help her, and they walked all that day and part of the next until they came to the tall tree in the branches of which the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. It was a very tall tree, and the trunk was so smooth that no one could climb it. But the Woodman said at once, "I'll chop it down, and then we'll get the Scarecrow's clothes back." So here's a picture. And you can see the Winkies are all of the yellow dressed people, characters, sort of like the Munchkins. But remember, the Munchkins dressed in blue. So these are the Winkies, and they dress in yellow. And then, of course, you see Dorothy and the Lion. And here's Toto, and he's watching the Tin Woodsman, who is going to chop down the tree so that they can get the Scarecrow back again, because no one can climb the tree. The bark is too smooth. Now, while the tinsmiths had been at work mending the Woodman himself, another of the Winkies, who was a goldsmith, had made an axe handle of solid gold and fit it to the Woodman's axe instead of the broken old handle. Others polished the blade until all the rust was removed and it glistened like burnished silver. As soon as he had spoken, the Tin Woodman began to chop, and in a short time the tree fell over with a crash. When the Scarecrow's clothes fell out of the branches, and rolled to the ground. Dorothy picked them up and had the Winkies carry them back to the castle, where they were stuffed with nice, clean straw. And behold, here was the Scarecrow, as good as ever, thanking them over and over again for saving him. Now they were reunited. Dorothy and her friends spent a few happy days at the Yellow Castle, where they found everything they needed to make them comfortable. But one day, the girl thought of Aunt Em once again and said, "It's time for us to go back to Oz and claim his promise." "Yes," said the Woodman, "and at last I shall get my heart." "And I shall get my brains," added the Scarecrow joyfully. "And I shall get my courage," said the Lion thoughtfully. "And I shall finally get back to Kansas," cried Dorothy, clapping her hands. "Oh, let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow." This they decided to do. The next day they called the Winkies together and bade them goodbye. The Winkies were so sorry to have to let them go, and they had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman that they begged him to please stay and rule over them and be their king in the Yellow Land of the West. Finding that they were determined to go, the Winkies gave Toto and the Lion each a present of a golden collar. And to Dorothy they presented the most beautiful bracelet, all studded with diamonds. And to the Scarecrow they gave a gold-headed walking stick to keep him from stumbling. And to the Tin Woodman they offered him a silver oil can with gold and precious jewels inlaid all over it. Every one of the travelers made the Winkies a pretty speech in return, and all shook hands with them until their arms ached. Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard to fill her basket with food for the journey, and there she saw the golden cap. She tried it on her own head and found that it fit exactly. She didn't know anything about the magic and charms of the golden cap, but she thought that it was pretty, so she made up her mind to wear it and carry her sunbonnet in her basket. Then, being prepared for her journey, they all started for the Emerald City, and the Winkies gave them 3 cheers and many good wishes to carry with them. And the next chapter is called The Winged Monkeys. So here they go off again. And at the very last minute, while Dorothy was packing up her basket, she decided to grab the golden cap. She has no idea what the winged monkeys are, or that they belong to the cap, I should say. She's met the winged monkeys, but she has no idea that you control them through the golden cap. And so that's going to be kind of a surprise to her. Now, there aren't really pictures from the movie at these parts, because the next few chapters don't happen in the movie. So there are sometimes some pictures in this picture book, which I'll try to show you. Let's see. We left off right here, of course, where she doused the witch with water and melted her. And here are the Winkies in this picture book, and they're carrying off the Tin Woodsman. They were tinsmiths, it said in the storybook. And a tinsmith is somebody who works with tin. So they were going to put the Tin Woodsman back together. And did you also hear that they were so fond of him that they asked him to come back and be their king? So we'll see if he does that by the end of the story. And here they are waving goodbye. So here are our main characters, and they're waving goodbye to the Winkies. And you'll see, in fact, that the lion is actually shedding a little tear. He's so sad. And you can see all the gifts that they were given. Dorothy here has the golden cap on. But if you look very closely, you can see Toto has his gold collar on. The Scarecrow has his walking stick. Dorothy has her beautiful bracelet with diamonds on it. The Tin Woodman has his golden handled axe and his new oil can. And the lion has on his gold collar, but it's kind of hard to see since he is pretty golden himself. So off they go. And they're going back to the Emerald City because they said they need to keep Oz truthful to his promise. He promised if the Wicked Witch of the West was dead, he would give them everything they wanted. So that's where we're leaving for right now. Tune back in for chapter 14, either after this or on another day, and we'll see what happens. All right. Thanks, my little munchkins, or I should say my little winkies. There's no place like home. Bye.